Good morning. Okay, I thought I'd go over these reteaches with you besides just giving you the lesson video today. Remember today, I think I wrote in the notes, today is about thinking about what you notice. There's not going to be a ton of working out, a little bit, but mostly it's about looking at the data and making understanding of it for yourself so that you can make sense of it and give it a description of some sort. Okay, so this first one, 13.7, is actually describe the distributions. So let's look at this first problem. Mr. Chen asks all of his students how long it takes them to clean their rooms. He displayed the information in a histogram. You can see that to the right. Describe the data distribution. Okay, so I'm just going to try to slide this up so we can see all of it. Okay, so looking at that, I can see the number of minutes along the bottom for the histogram and the frequency. And that would be like how many students agreed with that, right? So 2 students, it takes them somewhere between 1 to 20 minutes. About 12 students, somewhere between 21 to 40, 14 students, okay, and so on. You can understand that. So this is the number of students, the frequency, how many students took this much time, okay? And we can see, we could ask a question possibly like if we needed to come up with a question, what kind of statistical question could we ask using this data? We might want to say how many, let's see, which number of minutes or which, what's that word? Yep, it's morning and it's Tuesday. Like maybe which number of minutes took students the most, or how many more, which section had the most students that spent that time cleaning their room. That was a really tricky question, but the understanding is there's more students. The most students take somewhere between 40 to 60. Okay. Yep. It's just like in class, right? Where I fumble a little bit. But yeah, the understanding is if we can come up, we could also ask a question of what's the least amount of time students took, or cleaning their room, or what's the time section that the least amount of students take. And we could say, oh, well, in 1 to 20 minutes, there's only 2 students. Okay, something like that. Not for this. We don't need to do that for this one, but it could come up in other questions you'll deal with. So the next thing would be to look for clusters. So these are steps right here on the side. They do not need to be done in this order. It's just an idea. So are there any clusters here? Okay, so it says there are no groups of data that are separated from the rest. So there are no clusters. So in this, even though it looks like, well, here's the biggest range, there's still no gap. So there's no clusters. Okay, which, because there's no clusters and no gaps, those two kind of go together. As you can see, the next one is, are there any gaps? No, there aren't any gaps. Okay, and then step 3, are there any peaks? And yes, there is a peak. There's a peak right here between 41 and 60 minutes. So you would say that. Okay, and this is maybe just something you're identifying. If your question asks you for each of those things, you'll just answer those questions, and then we'll come up with a description at the end. Okay, and then in the very last question, and it kind of makes me knock off that picture a little bit, but you look for symmetry. Okay, and this says, imagine folding the graph in half vertically. Remember, symmetry is if we were to draw a line somewhere, both sides are pretty equal or are equal. Look exactly the same, like a mirror image. Imagine folding the graph in half vertically along the middle of the interval 4160. The halves are not identical, but they are close. So we would actually call this graph symmetric, even though, see, this is a little shorter and this is a little taller than this one. But you can see that if I was to draw a triangle right there from the midpoint, they are pretty close. So we would call this symmetrical. This graph does have symmetry. Okay, so let's look at the example down here. Okay. So, sorry, it's a little tilty, but Sally has a restaurant. She recorded the cost of each person's dinner on Friday. Describe the distribution. Okay, so first let's look at some things. Do we have some peaks? Yeah, we have a peak right here. Maybe I'll put an arrow, and we have a peak right here. Okay, so see, I'm just noticing what's going on in the graph. Is there a cluster? Yeah, this stuff right here is clustered, which then means we have a gap right here, right? Okay, what do we call this again? This one that's all the way out here, we call this an outlier. Okay, kind of doing its own thing. You can see that I wrote that. There you go. Okay, so let's describe some things. So we could say there are peaks, and I'll just write that down. There are peaks at $8, and I'm going to put the and sign, and $11, right? Okay, there's one description. It doesn't say just give me one description. It says describe it. So there are peaks at $8 and $11. There is a cluster. There is a cluster from $8 to $13. I guess I'm going to come down here. $8 to $13. Okay? You can write that little sign or write 2. It's fine. And we notice when we have clusters, there's going to be, if we do have clusters, that means we have gaps. So, and there's a gap at 14 to 15. So we don't count the ones where there are something. So, and there is a gap at or from. That works. $14 to $15. Okay. And then in this one, what do you guys think? If we were to find, is there a center, like is there something we can notice as a good middle that we're just trying to understand? Is there symmetry in this collection of data? And I would say no. There's no place where we drew a line and there'd be. I mean, the gaps usually mess that up unless there had been a gap on this side with an outlier. So there is no symmetry. Okay? Okay, so that's 13.7. Now I'm going to do some for 13.8. Okay, so here we go. This one is problem solving, but it's paying attention to misleading statistics. Okay, so up here we have Zara wants to move to a town where the annual snowfall is no more than 5 inches. A real estate agent tells her that the mean annual snowfall in a certain town is 4.5 inches. Other statistics about the town are given in the table. Does this location match what Zahir, I don't know how you say that name, sorry, Zahir wants? Why or why not? So we have this table over here. It gives us our minimum, our maximum, our median, and our mean. And I'll just right here, when we do that, read the problem. What do I need to find? What information do I use? What will I use? How will I use that information? Those are just questions to ask yourself. And then down here, we filled in some information. When you problem solve, this was up in that data table earlier. So I don't need, I've moved it down so we can just look at this. So the minimum is 0.5. The maximum, 12 inches. Okay, so if you remember, Zara wants a place that is no more than 5 inches, but this has times where it goes up to 12 inches. The median, remember, median is more like is a middle value. If you were to put all the data points for the year in a line, 8 is right there in the middle. Remember, we know median and mean are measures of middle, but they do represent different things. Because in this case, if you look at this, they're very different. The mean is 4.5, so these two are quite different. So here's something to think about. The median is 8 inches, which means that half of the data is equal to or greater than 8 inches. Half or more. That means that for most of the year, it is much higher than the 5 inches that Zare wanted. Okay, so here's our thinking. The annual snowfall is greater than 5 inches because at least half of the annual snowfall values are greater than the 5 inches. So this location does not match what Zare wants. So do you see what we did? We just took the data and tried to make sense of it to go along with the question that she asked. Okay, so let's check out this one together. Okay, Max says he typically spends 4 hours per week practicing his piano. For the past 6 weeks, he has practiced for 1, 2, 10, and 9 hours. So first week, he only practiced 1. Second week, he only practiced 1. Third week, he only practiced 1. And so on. Okay, do you agree with Mac? Okay, do you agree? So think in your head, do you agree? And this is what I'm going to tell you. And I'm not going to write this whole thing down. So just be listening, and you can write it down if you want, because you can pause the video, write down what you want, start it again, pause it again. Okay, so here could be an answer. I mean, I hope you can see no, we don't agree that Mac typically spends 4 hours a week. Does he typically? Look at these 6 weeks. Does he typically? I mean, these are way lower, and these two are way higher than 4 hours. They might average out to 4, but that would mean our average or our mean is not a good measure of middle, because he does not generally or typically spend 4 hours per week. Okay, so I might say something like this when I write my explanation. No, although the mean is 4, he has 2 outliers that help him get this mean. For 4 weeks out of 6, he practiced less than 4 hours, and the other 2 brought him up to that 4. So do you see these 2 outliers, even though they would have been a cluster outlier together, they would have pulled that up. If we wanted to do like a little histogram, dot plot. Let's see, and this one was 2, there's just 1. And then over here, granted they would probably be a little bit further away, 9 and 10. These are like a cluster outlier, and you can't even see that, my bad. Okay, these 2 are cluster outliers, but they pull what would have been his average up to 4, right? His mean, his average is 4. But that is not accurate. So, does that make sense? We don't agree with Mac because he's kind of playing with the numbers by having, it's probably kind of like procrastinating, where you wait till the last minute to get it all in so you can say that you took the time. So he put in a ton of time on these 2 days, and it pulled these numbers up. Make sense? Awesome. Have an awesome day. I know my video is way longer than the other ladies, but I hope I gave a little bit more explanation. Remember, if you don't get something, watch it again. Stop it and take notes. You have to participate in your learning. Don't just sit there and have someone talk at you and hope you grab it. That's not how learning works. I love you so much. I miss you guys so much. These are the last 2 lessons of this chapter. This is our last chapter. So we will review for the next couple days and test on Friday or Thursday if we're feeling pretty good. You guys can give me some feedback about that. And then we're going to just start doing some review of the things we've learned this year. Okay, prepare yourselves. You guys are amazing. Don't give up. Don't shut down. Look for answers. Love you. Bye.